Welcome to Coffee and Cases. This morning we are going to be having a chat around some human factors and a trauma patient where there were some airway challenges. Before we jump into the presentation, I just want to remind everyone, please put your mics on mute unless you really want to ask something or say something. And then please don't forget to fill in the register. I've had a lot of requests this week around CPD points, but there's no register entry for them. So please just make sure that you fill in the register. You've got the right CPD number. You've got your HPCSA details correct. If you get your number wrong, it's really difficult for us to submit the 400 odd that we need to. Also, just a reminder, today's presentation is sponsored by LaneMed. So the LaneMed group, specifically LaneMed eThekwini. Thank you so much for investing in the free open access education for the bigger team. We're going to jump straight into the presentation. So this morning we've got Waldo with us. He's actually here in South Africa instead of sitting in the UK, and he's going to maybe start us off.
There you go. Hey guys. So I thought it was worth talking about, well, people can see our faces. Hi guys. I thought it was worth talking about a case that I had. I think that we'll show you the airway itself, and I think the airway is its own talking point, but I think the things that lead up to that airway and the things that follow on after the airway are really worth talking about. The human factors and the thinking from my point of view and the team's point of view leading up to the actual point of doing the intubation and then after is quite useful. So we went to I don't know, he was male, mid-50s, possibly. He was cycling, was hit by a car while cycling. We were in the air on the way back to base and were pretty much overhead within 3 minutes. I think from time of impact with the car to us arriving on scene was 7 minutes. The patient was almost instantly in traumatic cardiac arrest. Cycling behind him was a ED consultant, and the car that saw it happen coming from the other side was 2 surgeons. So he had pretty quick access to like care in terms of starting things. So they started traumatic cardiac arrest algorithm, bound his pelvis, hot principles, sphincter-thoracostomies. We arrived, got a handover, and I think in total we treated the patient maybe for like 5 minutes. And then in that time, we had confirmed the finger thoracostomies. We'd confirmed, well, I'd put in a tube, and we were figuring out whether we were going to give blood or not. That was the next trigger point, at which point we decided it was most likely going to be futile. And he didn't have a PEA anymore, it was asystolic. So likelihood of anything coming from that was basically 0. Following the case, we fill in like other than the PRF itself, we fill in like a CAT data capture form for ourselves. And I edited the video down from the video laryngoscope. I popped it on there, didn't have a chance to review it. And we just went call to call to call to call that day. I did the job with like senior members of the clinical and the leadership team. There were 3 of us. So it's quite an experienced team of people. But yeah, I think maybe it's worth showing the video now.
I just have to find. Let me just do that. Guys, please mute yourselves if you are not meant to be speaking.
So can we share the video again? Just for, I don't know if you all saw it. So the first time I watched the video back and was given the video back to watch, I'll talk you through it. I think my intubation technique's not great from a starting point. I struggled to identify landmarks quite a bit, and I definitely should have suctioned on the way in. But bright outside, a little bit stressful, which we'll talk about the human factors getting to this position. He had some weird, I felt like some weird airway anatomy. Definitely should have suctioned. It's the beauty of a video laryngoscope. Probably a bit deep with the blade, but it's okay. Everything's scooped. But you'll see the bougie goes in, and it's just, you can basically still see the tip of the bougie over there. I just don't have the bougie in far enough. And it's, at this point, it just slips out and it goes esophageal. I think the important things to talk about this are my human factors leading up to the case, and the decision to intubate as a whole as part of the case, I think, is the first talking point. I think the second talking point is probably going to be the fact that we had end-tidal CO2 after that.
So weird.
Which is why none of us picked it up during the case. And I think the third talking point is how the system managed the error.
So maybe if we start off with like who was with you? How did you get there? What were some of the stresses that led up to the arrival of the patient?
I think from a general shift perspective, there wasn't much, to be honest. We'd only done like 2 or 3 calls before that. We'd been stood down. It was day one, super well rested. So there was nothing like team-wise that was an issue. It was 2 people I work with a lot. It was my mentor and someone else. So like, I know them well. We've done a lot of shifts together. So there's nothing team-wise that was initially a problem. I think reflecting back on it, I got signed off for intubation that week. And because I got signed off, everyone was pretty sure I was competent, which I should be because I'm signed off. So no one assisted me or watched what I was doing. So when I was struggling, the doctor looked over and helped me just figure out where I was in the airway. And once the bougie went through the cords, he then moved away to continue something else.
It's done.
Because it's done.
Yeah.
And turns out it's not. And the entire week before, I'd done 5 shifts in peds theaters doing intubations, and it's literally drilled into you, don't put the bougie in too far, don't put it in too far, don't put it in too far. So I think just from an intubation perspective, I think those are the 2 things that led up to it, because it's like, you do feel, it's almost, I don't want to say cocky, but you feel almost too comfortable now that you've been signed off. You think, I've been signed off, I'm fine.
I'm good.
Yeah. Obviously not.
But it's also that like sort of relaxation of, I am good, but you're only good because you're on high alert all the time.
Yeah.
You're not good because you've chilled and relaxed in a tube. So I think that's a really awesome learning point. But I think what also changes things a little bit is, and I find that with myself, is when there's more than one person on the scene who trust each other, you think things would go absolutely perfectly.
And they don't.
But that's exactly where they seem to fall apart. Exactly.
We've done it. Yeah.
It's like, I trust that you are as engaged as you're supposed to be. So I'm not going to engage fully because you've got this.
Yeah.
And you might have had a moment of like lost concentration, or you just got yourself in a loop of error. I mean, when you and I did it, I messed up a ketamine dose horrifically, and everyone was like, it's perfect.
Literally.
Yeah. And so I think that sometimes having somebody there where you're too comfortable also creates a bit of drama. Guys, please mute yourselves if you are not speaking directly. I don't know if there's any thoughts from the bigger team on those points, and maybe some of the errors or challenges that others in the team have had, especially around not really hierarchy, but around teams in which you have a lot of trust, but there may still be errors that are happening. Any thoughts from the bigger group? Corinne, do you want to go ahead?
I'll do it because no one else is talking. thank you for sharing that. I wanted to say, for me, there's a fine line between being confident in your teammate, because you have to have trust. Like, that's very, very important. But again, that can be then the negative, because if you have too much trust, you also don't watch each other. And that's what happened. He's like, Boogie's in, everything's fine. He's going to be fine. But they didn't go back and check. But again, I don't know what the sweet spot is. You have to trust each other, but also still watch each other. I don't know. But it was excellent job.
I agree with you. I think having trust in high performance teams is really important. But I think just because you trust someone, and I don't think someone's level of experience or competence doesn't make them less error prone. Well, possibly it probably makes them less error prone as a whole, but I think they are just as likely to make errors as everyone else. So I think that's one of the things where I think trust probably that erodes the trust a little bit, is you can still make errors. And then because everyone else around you trusts you as much as they do, the errors go unchecked.
But you also feel like there was maybe an element of, this is my first intubation after being signed off. I didn't think about it at the time. I was completely chilled. Like, all of these things I think about have all come up post. Yeah.
Because
you're like trying to figure out how it happened.
I got showed the video 3 days later and it never crossed my mind.
Yeah, because the Bougie was in.
Bougie was in, and it was so bright outside. And with there's that little slit at the bottom, I thought there was a weird airway anatomy. So I was like, that's really weird airway anatomy. And we had end-tidal. So we guessed the tubes during the tying process with the Thomas come back a little bit and sitting supraergotically. Because we're getting the same.
Getting some of the CO2.
We're getting the same CO2 that we were getting on an iGel. So
and the patient's in cardiac arrest. So the value's like super not great anyway.
No. So it looks like on value of things. And when I was bagging, they had fingers in lungs and they were feeling lungs move.
Yeah.
So it honestly looked like a tube that was in.
Yeah.
It's only just on watching the video back, which someone else caught, which is part of the governance process. Someone caught that and was like, there's a problem.
This is the problem.
Yeah.
So maybe I think the second thing you wanted to chat about was
starting the job in the first place.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I think, we went down a rabbit hole potentially by actually, that I feel looking back, he was asystolic from crew arrival. There was no pneumos. His pelvis was very, very mangled. Lower limbs were mangled. Massive head injury with a depressed skull fracture. His pupils were already fixed and dilated. He was already pale.
He was dead.
He was dead.
Yeah.
So when the crew and the 3 doctors that arrived started doing stuff, and by the time we arrived, we know the crew, we knew one of the doctors, the ED doctor, we knew her. And she handed over, and it kind of like primes you, which I think is also a really important thing about handovers, right? Because you can prime the next team into doing something.
Yeah, 100%.
And she handed over, and we automatically are then going into the process saying, sweet, because we've been told this is what's happening. And looking back, at the moment we entered the case, there was no reason to continue.
But she was so invested.
But we also became invested pretty quickly.
Because of her, 100%.
And possibly the other doctors too.
Yeah.
And the crew, like everyone's working pretty hard. You kind of walk in and say,
you can't be like, no.
Yeah. You should be.
You could be, but it's hard to.
But it's hard, especially not when you don't have the mental time to prep for the case. Because I mean, then telling us we're flying over it, we're landing, and we're walking. It's from like it's nuts. Firstly, the timeline is crazy. The fact that we can even do that.
You were there within like 6 minutes of the accident.
That's mad.
That's insane.
But I don't know, and that's one of the things I reflect on the most is, should we have been put in a position to make the error, and could the error have been prevented by making the correct decision earlier?
To resus or not resus.
Which I don't know the answer to that.
It's easier to think about it now, but in the moment you don't even have that second to even consider.
Because from the tube going in to us stopping was 2 minutes.
Yeah. But the other big thing is, if you have such a short period of time to the patient, even in a traumatic cardiac arrest, you could have a really good outcome. It's possible.
You could.
It's not always likely, but it is possible.
Yeah, it is. But he's not in a PEA. Yeah. He's not in any of those typical blood loss looking cases. You know, it's not like we don't carry blood. We have blood. We have everything we could require. It's just he was dead.
Dead. They did.
So I don't know. That's one of the things I wonder if we should have even started, to be honest. But that's only you can look at retrospectively. There's no way to do that in the moment, I don't think.
Imagine you hadn't started. You wouldn't have learned any of the things you learned.
Yeah, listen, it's not fun learning the things I'm learning.
I see there was another hand up. Andrew, did you want to ask something?
Morning, everyone. I just had a comment. So I'm quite a junior, but I was recently in conversation with a senior who spoke about just in terms of what you were discussing about after your sign off, if there was that element of not sort of questioning yourself, but just commenting in general, that there's this idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect that we were exposed to, which is a kind of a graph of, as your career progresses, confidence and competence, that as you are a junior, that your competence is, you overestimate it in terms of your confidence, and then you get to a point where you actually start to, your confidence drops even though you're a lot higher, more competent than you think you are, and then you finally start kind of building up. I just thought it was an interesting kind of graph to share.
It's a really cool
pop it in the
thought,
chat.
and I think it's also not just around sort of your career as a whole. I think we go through those peaks and troughs continuously. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think so.
sometimes even as a senior in the space, I find myself thinking, I don't know this thing. How stupid am I?
Yeah.
Or I am overconfident in what I know, because I think I know something that I maybe don't know as
Yeah.
well as I do. And you kind of, so the Dunning-Kruger over a long period of time, but also over these really short iterations.
But also, I think over the periods of change. So like, there's always that period of going through a new organization change, but it's in a new country, in a new system that works quite differently. So there's a lot of doubt that happens, and like you don't feel like you're competent at all.
And you're not in that system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you have this moment of I've been signed off, and you're like,
Now I have to be competent.
I am styling. I've done this.
I am it.
And then it just goes tits up. But one of the doctors that we work with, he's an anaesthetist, and he said in the 2 hospitals in Bristol, the most adverse events that occur around anesthetics happen to consultants in their first 6 months of sign-off.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, when are you going to crash your car? In the first 6 months post your driver's license.
So that's the most dangerous period for them in their system in anesthetics, which I was like, I don't know if it directly applies, but I can see
It
that.
definitely applies. I mean, if you think about even our ECPs qualifying, that first year of practice, I can only speak for myself. My first year of
I'll agree
practice
with you.
was horrific.
Yeah.
I was a dangerous practitioner. But you learn the lesson, which is sad because the patient learns it with you, but you learn the lesson and you make yourself better so that you don't do those same things for that next patient. But if you hadn't have resuscitated this guy, you wouldn't have learned this lesson.
Okay.
And it's waiting then to catch you.
Yeah.
At some point.
At
it's
some
gonna
point it'll
happen.
catch you.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just, if you want, we can chat about what happens post that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
So the way it was identified in the first place is every day the cases are done by the team the next day. They go through all the cases and they will flag stuff that they think's worth talking about. Then every week there's a nominated person of a separate, they're part of the main team, but a separate group that then review all the cases again and then review the flags. And I think it's every second or third week, they have a meeting of all the reviewed cases. And then that then goes into the governance structure for the governance days. But a case like this, where it's been identified and it's a pretty recent, it's pretty big, it needs to rapidly be sorted. They've built a rapid response system. So this was picked up within the same day. 8 of the leadership team were watching it, talking about it. The next day, it was within the ambulance service, having a discussion with the entire governance team in the ambulance service. And then on day 3, they spoke to me about it. But by then it was had been reported. So it got reported then to the ambulance service. It was investigated by them, all the medical directors. It then went to a separate independent ambulance team to have review and get a review report. It was then reported to the coroner because the case has gone criminal because of the driver. Yeah. So it's been reported to the coroner.
And then is it like you, or is it the?
So
it's the truck.
Yeah. So we'll have to see. I will have to go to court, I think, and explain that video, probably. But that's okay. I think the learning from it is good. That then turned into, there's been policy change around that. Even with the eye gel, his end tidal, because they work in KPA, was 0.6. So what's that? Like 7.
Yeah.
And they've now instituted that, because when we do an RSI, we have 3 checklists: the pre, the post, and the before we transport checklist. There's a set way of packing out the bags. The assistant has a set list of tasks. Like, it's very protocolized the way we RSI.
Yeah.
We don't do that for any other intubation. You just kind of like do what you want. So they've changed. There's now like in the checklist, they've taken out the things that are important just from an intubation point of view.
And a post-intubation point of view.
And that's now in for cardiac arrest. So you have to run through
A check.
pre-intubation checklist and cardiac arrest. And where possible, because we don't always work in teams of 2 or 3, where possible, a second member of the team has to look at the screen. VL's become the primary thing now. That's just an internal team thing that's changed. From an ambulance service point of view, they have now changed, if an end tidal CO2 is less than 1, it needs to be rechecked. So it doesn't have to be taken out. You have to have a relook. And it has to be recorded. So that's turned into, instead of doing that, you finish the intubation, you watch the tube go through, you bag, you see 7 waveforms of EtCO2, and you leave the camera in until you have your 7 waveforms that are above 1.
That's amazing. I want to ask you, from the perspective of coming from a South African environment where there's a slow move towards a structure that looks similar. And I think in the rocket space, there's definitely maybe a faster move towards that.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of resistance in terms of that feeling of discomfort, of having my stuff reviewed, of knowing other people are looking at my things. How did you adapt to that change?
I think for me, it was easy. I think adapting to it was just natural because of working with Marina and then coming here and already being pretty open. Like, if I've made an error, I'm very open about it. You know that.
Yeah.
So like, I think I'm not a good example of, I don't know what the average paramedic coming out is like. I don't know. I've lost touch completely, So I don't know what how they're feeling when they come out. But I know before I moved into CCRS 2 years post-grad, I don't think I'd want people reviewing my stuff, which is how I felt then. So I think the change would be really hard. But what makes it easy to get into is the fact that it's consistently done by everyone. So it's not just you.
Yeah, no.
There's no specific target. So every day, whoever's on shift reviews all the cases for the day before, and it gets spoken about.
Yeah.
And they talk about the smallest of detail, then that gets brought up. And we'll spend an hour talking about which infusion pump was used because of the rates. One uses a little fixed pushing forward, one's things like that. Like, it happens.
And when you have those conversations, you can have those conversations about the depth.
Yeah.
When you're not having the conversations, it's really hard to have those learning conversations.
So I think for me, it was easy to transition because of CCRS and Rocket and the system. But I think even if you were to do it at like a very macro scale and just someone having a look and saying, that's interesting, why did you choose?
How did you get there?
How did you get there?
Yeah.
Or why did you choose this medication over this medication, for instance,
And I think what's really important is seeing it not as an attack on your practice, but seeing it as a curiosity.
Yeah.
I want to understand
Humble inquisition.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
You did something that I would never have thought to do. How did you get to that decision?
And
it might be a better decision.
And it might be, but it might also be the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But then
it's charitable.
that's when you communicate. Yeah. So I think it is a hard thing to come into. Like, it is really hard to sit there and stand in front of 30 of your peers with that video on the screen saying, I did that.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
And then the people that I did the call with are saying, but we were responsible for you. So they're taking organizational blame.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but it was me. It's like, that is hard. Like, when it goes wrong, it's hard. It's not easy when it goes wrong.
It's also not necessarily about putting blame onto somebody. No. It's more about saying, okay, so you did that. Now we have some steps that we need to take so that doesn't happen again. Yeah. And then what do we do institutionally? But also, I love the idea that the whole system is now changing their practice.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that can be pushed a little bit far. So like, you change your practice based on the smallest thing. But this is a big thing. And this is something that happens. I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened.
I can always guarantee you, because most of the people have never heard of one. And I was like, yeah, but that's because none of you record. And a lot of people have been practicing for 20 years. Yeah. You can't record a DL.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has probably been unidentified so many times.
Especially in the cardiac arrest case.
So now it's just, we have evidence that it happens. and it's just I'm the unlucky one that
You're
had
the
to have to
guy.
take it, which is fine. I think it's important because it has made system change, despite it being deeply uncomfortable, and shit. Honestly,
Even in a safe, healthy, just environment, it still sucks.
it still sucks. Yeah.
And I think it also sucks a little bit more because the kind of people engaged in this kind of work, this kind of care, take it really seriously,
Yeah.
take themselves really seriously, really show up with the intention of doing the best. And then sometimes things still go wrong.
Yeah, they do. Some days your best is just not good enough. Literally.
And it's not because you're not good enough. It's because the system or the
Just
patient is harder than
Yeah.
what you have the ability
Just doesn't
to
allow
deal
for
with.
it.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's pretty much what I'm feeling.
That's it. Let's see, there are a few hands up. Lesego, your hand's been up for a while. I don't know if your hand's up on purpose. Do you wanna?
That checklist comment. I wanna.
Okay, while we wait for Lesego, do you wanna answer the
Yeah. So with regards to the checklists, I agree with you. I think if you have an ill-fitting checklist and it becomes a box ticking exercise, it's not appropriate. Our checklist, I'm going to say it's a box ticking exercise. It is a box ticking exercise, but it's designed in the way in which we perform an RSI. So the kit dump, the way we do the kit dump and everything, the way that gets done happens in a certain order. So when it comes to the checklist, it's literally 30 seconds of just
making sure
everything is there. But also the one thing our checklists do, which is it's box ticking, but what it does is it's sharing our mental model, because what ends up happening is if there's two of us, one of us, it doesn't really matter. We're very flat hierarchically. We're quite flat. So like maybe I'll be upstairs, and it's England, so the stairs are really small, and it's shitty getting people downstairs. But I'll be upstairs with the patient, and then the doctor will be setting up the kit dump. So he has no idea what I'm doing
and what you're bringing.
and what's coming down. And then sometimes the roles swap. So the checklist gets us on the same page. And most of the time, there's almost no conversation. We go to the patient together. We're doing this. One of us steps out. It's usually the paramedic, because we're a bit more efficient with the kit than the doctors are. Step out, set up the kit dump, do the drugs, everything. And then when they come out, we'll figure out who's doing the intubation, and then it starts. So we can do from time of call and cardiac arrest, that's relatively close by. We can have them in PCR, RSI in less than an hour.
Yeah.
Like it's really efficient.
Close, yeah.
Really efficient.
And I think that's also where those like the systems of checklists being checklists. If you have an hour from Paul to cath lab, it's a whole different story than if you've got a 7 hour from Paul to cath lab.
Very different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like the same as, because I'm a technical crew member, so I have to sit up front in the aircraft and help if things start going wrong. I do the navigation, that kind of stuff. Even their checklists, I always thought, like when something starts to go wrong on an aircraft, they bring out the book and they start looking. No, they've done everything in the book.
And then they just
double check they've done everything. So that's how I see our checklist. But if you're using the checklist to prep your things, you have done a bad job of prepping yourself for that.
Yeah. And I also think you maybe haven't done enough work to know what all the things are that you need to do. Yeah. The checklist is a safety mechanism. Karine.
Sorry, I was struggling with the mute button. I wanted to go back to what you said right in the beginning when you said the system managed the error. And that for me was amazing to say it's not the individual that failed, it's the system. And that was important. But you guys spoke a lot about it. I just wanted to emphasize it again. That's something that's for me crucial. It's the system then that has to get better to support you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is not an individual human being's responsibility, right? And you can't change practice by being the brave one standing up and saying I messed up, unless the system's ready for that and is built for it and knows how to deal with it and can put in place all the tools that are going to help you. It's like opening up a can of worms, not knowing where to put them.
Yeah.
And I think there's still a lot of work to be done in our spaces to get the system right.
I think
so that there's safety.
I think the problem, you see, now that I've spent some time away, I think one of the biggest failures of the South African system is just not integrated. So like we're an independent charity, there's 5 of them, but we all tie directly into the ambulance service who run the governance.
Yeah.
We run the governance locally, but there's then governance from an ambulance service point of view. So like
there's a bigger picture.
And we all get dispatched from the same call center. There's no, like we were talking about earlier, there's no selective patient grouping. If someone in my patch needs help, I'm going.
Yeah.
And it's irrelevant of anything else. So I think because of the siloed way that South Africa operates, I think that's kind of how we are as practitioners.
Yeah.
Because you'll go, I remember when I qualified going to a garage and there was someone from Netcare there. You say hello and you that's it. There's no like
cohesive team
nothing.
approach.
And there's no ways if you're not going to communicate with a fellow practitioner just in general, you're not going to open up your practice to them. So I think the siloed way in which the system works as a whole, like the healthcare system works, leads to practitioners being siloed and makes them
100%.
much less open.
And I think as soon as healthcare creates profits, it immediately creates a silo.
Yeah, 100%. Because the medical legal risk.
Yeah, it's just too high. Yeah. Are there any other thoughts, questions, comments, any questions for Waldo on the system? Anything anyone wants to share in terms of maybe errors or challenges that they've had? I want to start calling random names. Let's see what happens. Jared, anything from your side?
No, not really. Nothing from my side. It's been an interesting talk. Yeah, no, sorry.
I see there's a comment from Warren that just says George Hospital gives all the crew that bring in ventilated patients into the hospital that they would complete once they've handed over the patient. This was brought about because of an agonal moribund patient that was brought in by the crews. Warren, I don't know if you want to just elaborate on that. I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. KM, want to go ahead?
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this chat and presentation and the openness. It's very much necessary. And I think in as much as we are very much siloed and keeping our practices to ourselves, this is a good initiative to kind of break those. But again, now with my question, I just wanted to find out, like, what would an integrated system even look like in South Africa? Because we are so siloed. At the point where we are right now in this pin drop destination where we are, how would an integrated system even look?
We were talking about this actually just before we started. I think the NHS is pretty integrated. It's still got its hassles. I think you'd struggle to get a completely integrated system in South Africa because the NHS, 75% of the population pay into the NHS. It's had 70 years of funding to build it into what it is today, and it's still failing. I don't think there's the economic resources in this country to integrate it at any level at the moment. I think NHI might start doing that if it does happen, but then I don't think services like HEMS machines are going to be a priority. Like in the UK, all of the ambulances are charities because they're not a priority. The government doesn't fund a single one in England, at least, in Scotland. The Welsh are now funded, but so I don't think our space would fit into that system anyway. It's a really expensive space to be in for a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
So I honestly don't know. I don't know how to answer your question.
I think an integrated system actually starts with super basic primary care. Really good primary care. And then
the NHS is really good.
Layers on top of that.
If you're acutely dying or need something prevented, they're fantastic. No, they're really good.
It's too late if you're acutely dying.
No, those two parts of the system work exceptionally.
Everything in between.
Everything in between.
It's hard.
Need a dentist, you're fucked. You got tummy pain, you're fucked.
That's it.
But you might have high blood pressure. You'll come in every year for your test. You'll get your Q-risk score done. They'll check your prostate from 45 every year. Like, they're really good at that stuff. Yeah. But anything in between. So I don't know how to answer that question.
I don't know if we have good examples of integrated systems, truly integrated systems that actually work anywhere in the world.
No, I don't. And I don't think you'll ever have that with the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. It's just not possible.
Mali?
Hi, Caleb.
Hi.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't think we're ever going to have a fully integrated system. But for me, you know, like thinking back about the reference to the Dunning-Kruger effect and those things, I think it's a lot more achievable to, I mean, creating a culture, a just culture, is as difficult as creating, or probably as difficult as creating a integrated system. But I think it's a lot more doable from a practical point of view, because you're not relying on like the government for the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So things like these talks go a long way in fostering that culture within the EMS. And I think if there's one thing that we can do, and what we should be striving for, is to get practitioners to have this introspection, to say, what can I do better? And to create this culture where we're not offended by comments on how to improve ourselves, to see that as like, this is for the benefit of the patient. The next patient I will have, the next patient somebody else will have. It's a shared knowledge, and that's what we're trying to create. And I think that's a lot easier. And it's I'm excited because I'm seeing these things happening. And it's like you guys said, like when you start off in your career, you don't know what you don't know. You sort of find that out. But hospitals also have a very big role to play, because how many times have I seen patients arrive at my facility and then we never give feedback to the paramedics to say, this was the outcome of your patient. So if you get this again, these are the small interventions that you can do to improve outcomes the next time. Or you did a great job, this patient did well. Without feedback, there's very little growth. So, and that can happen with like good relationships between EMS and the hospitals. And it will go a long way to sort of create this culture that we're all striving for.
I like there's a word you use there, which I really like, is feedback. The problem is, so like I love that. The problem is we also need to learn how to give good feedback. So it's all good and well giving feedback, but if we're giving the feedback wrong, we also then close people off. So these conversations are really good because we're most likely the group of people that would try and give good feedback and be open to feedback. But someone who isn't exposed to this thought process or this way of thinking, this openness, if you were to try and give them feedback, and maybe you get it wrong, because we all get it wrong. Maybe something you say, like a good example, when I was showed that video, do you know how I was showed that video? By my mentor, was watch the video and tell me what you did wrong.
Let's think about it.
And I sat there for 20 minutes trying to figure out what I did wrong.
Yeah.
So the way I was given the feedback was really fucking
Shitty.
bad.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
That's very important.
So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I
fully.
agree.
So
It's really
I think
important.
we need to be also really good at giving feedback.
And really good at taking feedback from
Yeah.
wherever it comes.
Yeah.
Because
It's
so
a very big.
go for it.
So no, sorry, Caleb, you can finish.
I was just going to say, all of us think we're really good at giving feedback, but we all really suck at taking feedback. And I think
Much
that's
easier
part of
to
the
give
work.
it.
Of course.
100%.
You were shit. That was amazing. It's
Yeah.
so easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, receiving feedback is hard, and receiving bad feedback is harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've had the privilege of working with people like Laura Goldstein and people that I've really idolized in my career, who are great at giving feedback in a way that's, they don't make you feel stupid, you know. And I've always sort of thought, how do you get to that point? How do you get to a point where somebody will take the feedback without feeling like they did something wrong? Because sometimes it's just a different train of thought. Sometimes the person was in a different headspace, you know, when they were treating that patient. And I think it's so important, like when you're giving feedback, to first understand where that person was mentally, and what were the factors at play, before, you know, sort of judging what they did. And I find like facilitating the thought process, like just going through the case and trying to get them to identify areas where they can improve is a lot more powerful than actually telling them what they did wrong. But I can agree, like watching a video of yourself and trying to find the errors, like that would be very intimidating to me too. Like,
Yeah, that's hard.
you're like sitting there anxiously, you know, watching
It's like you're going to the
yourself.
principal's office.
I know, like
Look
that,
like
that's
you did
horrible.
wrong.
Yeah.
That's horrible. But giving feedback is a skill, and receiving feedback, yeah, it's always hard. It's always hard because, you know, especially if you're very hard on yourself, like myself, then you know, you don't want to do things wrong. We all want to be perfect, but we're not perfect. We're human.
There is
Yeah,
no way that
we're human.
perfection exists.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. Like, if you realize that you are not perfect, but you can strive to be better,
I
you're
think-
still going to
I
make
think
errors.
I think we all get closer to like mastery, but I think as we get closer to the line, the more the line moves up, and I don't think we'll
Yeah.
ever touch that
Never
line.
get there.
I don't think we'll ever. Some of us,
Yeah.
in certain times in our career, are a lot further from that line,
And sometimes you're really close,
and some
and then it disappears.
it does. It does. So
100%.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
I saw a few hands up. I'm going to go to Gian. I saw your hand was up first. I hope I'm saying your name right.
Hi, good morning. Yes, no, that's fine.
You can give me feedback.
The previous speaker actually said a lot of what I wanted to say, and I totally agree. The only other thing that I can maybe add to that is obviously, firstly, kudos to the bravery of actually going through this and then opening it up and speaking about it. So this is setting an example that I think can go a long way. But then also, in addition to that, I think those trust teams that we've got, that we spoke about earlier, that you guys talked about, I think that trust team shouldn't be about the trust. I think it should be more about a safe space. So if you develop the culture in your system to have the safe space to check up on each other, and yeah, that's pretty much, I think, part of the culture change that we need, is that if we work together well, and if we have a well-oiled machine amongst us, then I think it should be where we also double check each other and feel safe enough to be able to say, well, have you looked at this or tried this? Or yeah, that's just.
I just want to add on to something that you've said. And I think we think that a safe space is a comfortable space. And I
Yeah.
think we have to be super aware that the safer you create the environment for these hard conversations, the more uncomfortable
you'll be.
you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as soon as you're hoping for comfort, like, oh, don't worry, everyone makes these mistakes, then the learning disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that safe space should be a space where we can learn from it, but where you also have the safety of knowing, because we all have imposter syndrome. So the safety of knowing that I've got a partner or two partners or part of the team that is looking over my shoulder, but not in a bad way, in a way to create safety for the patient, but also a space for me to learn from. And that safe space should be reciprocal. So it should be where the one person can voice. So you need to feel safe to voice what you saw, whether it's right or wrong, or whether you agree with it or not, but you need to feel safe to voice it, but also you need to feel safe to hear these things.
Yeah. Yeah, fully agreed. And I think
But well,
you can
excellent
you
talk.
can-
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. I think what you can do with these safe spaces, though, is I don't think they have to be entire systems. I think, obviously, we've built a safe space here to be able to have these conversations on this platform, but you can have these same conversations in the room behind us. Like, I don't think you need a system. You can start.
We can build it for each other.
You can build it for each other. I think you could start with you and a crewmate if you're on an ambulance together, or you and your shift. I don't know how things work now, but I used to have a shift of 5-6
Yeah.
people. That's a good place to start building these things. And it's not going to change quickly, but just to start building these things that people can come to you and say, this is a problem, or you can say to them, this is a problem.
I think that backs onto what Marley said really nicely as well. It's just, we don't have to have someone else do it for us. We can build the safe environment, the just culture in small pockets as best we can until ground
And
cover.
it'll
snowball.
you'll get your herd immunity eventually.
Eventually.
You know?
I saw Pat, you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Hanisha.
Thanks, Caleb. Morning, everybody. Yeah, I actually put my hand down. I was going to chat to Walter afterwards, but I'll chat to him now. So look, I mean, you clearly come from an incredible system, and there's a massive driver to sort things out, whatever the issue is. But then what stumped me a little bit was your mentor, who then sort of showed you a video and said, "Tell me what you did wrong." How's he going to take that, and how's he going to change the practice?
So that was that was something that was spoken about when we did our presentation to the wider team. And that was something that was brought up and was discussed in terms of how the feedback was given. I don't know how he's going to change. I don't know if he's going to have to give feedback like that again anytime soon. I'll let you guys know. I'll be back. But we spoke about it at length, and he apologized a lot. He did feel really bad.
I think sometimes also the person who has the name of mentor is not necessarily someone who's learned how to do the soft stuff better. That's somebody maybe who's really good in that space, who knows the environment too. And then they're human as well. I mean, I mess up on a daily basis. Just listening to you have this conversation, I gave feedback yesterday that was shit. I need to go and fix that. But only realizing it after the conversation.
And my mentor's also one of those people who's exceptionally hard on himself. So by not giving, the way he gave me feedback is not a reflection of me, but
it's a reflection of
him and his mental state at the time, because he feels like he let me down to put me in that position to do that, which is like, so all
everyone's just blaming themselves.
Like got this weird like thing happening, and it's just a system failure. So I don't think it was he was trying to be intentional, but it just, so Pat, I don't know how he's going to change. I haven't asked him. I just accepted his apology and now tease him about it.
I mean, I think it's pretty cool. And I mean, you know, as you say, anybody can have a bad day or you know, wherever he was at the time. But I'm also guessing that in your system, if I think about what you're going through now, I don't think anybody just puts their hand up to be a mentor. I would assume there's quite a process that needs to go through. Or that they would need to go through to be there.
They have to do like extra courses and all sorts of stuff to be mentors. They like cycle through the people supposedly, but they have to go through like an extra 2-week course on how to be a mentor. So like there's a lot of stuff that goes on. It's not just you are picked, but he's been, other than this one thing, I cannot complain about him.
And the reality is, when you're under pressure, you're going to go back to what you've always done. So he probably went back to how he has previously been given or given feedback because of a level of stress, anxiety. That's human. Hinisha.
Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Hi, guys. Hi, Caleb. Thanks for such an interesting talk. I'm just coming from a nursing perspective. So I'm from an emergency department unit manager perspective. And I think all the conversations I've heard is actually so relevant to what we experience. And I think when I heard one of the previous guys mention something about debriefing, and I think the biggest thing that EMS and hospitals need to have in place is building rapport and teamwork. And I think it's very difficult in the South African setting because there is so many emergency services. But I think as a hospital, what we've done is we've taken the stance of building these relationships with as many of the EMS, and then debriefing. Generally, when it's hot and it's heavy, we don't do it immediately. We rather save it for M&Ms, which we do monthly, or you call in and have a specific meeting. But most of the time, if it's on the spot learning and the paramedic is present, the doctors tend to want to actually keep them with them, and then you actually learn as you go. And I've seen that it's actually built such a strong relationship between EMS that, you know, they have an open door policy with the doctors where they can actually get the feedback or call and ask about it, about certain patients. But I think it takes time, and it takes building that rapport with your specific hospital, and it can work.
I think that's incredible to like build that relationship, because I know that's something I struggled with here, is building those relationships. Where when I started with the ambulance team, most of the consultants that work for us work in the ED, that's the major trauma center. So it's really easy. Like the patient process flows from known to known the whole way through. And I think that then makes feedback really easy, because we then get follow up on the patients. But what we try and do is every single case we take in, we speak to the crew afterwards, every single time, no matter what, even if it's just to praise them, that it has to happen. And I think we don't do it as much from a hospital point of view, but I think in the South African setting, it's probably a good place to do it, because you don't have the capacity in the systems just don't exist necessarily to do it within the services. So I think doing it between practitioner to practitioner is really, really good.
We've started getting feedback from one of the hospitals where we drop patients off, but like reliable feedback every week. And sometimes you can follow the patient for 3 or 4 weeks over
That's
a period of time, and it changes the way you think about things. You
definitely.
immediately, oh, I remember that patient because he was this sick on that day, and then you have this whole progression. Yeah. Madly, I see your hand again.
Sorry, I need to find the unmute button again. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about feedback now, so maybe this is a little bit off track. But what I've like conversations that I've had recently, like within our service, or the pre-hospital service that I'm involved in, is one. So the one comment is also like if from a mentor perspective or from a more senior practitioner perspective, one of the things that I sort of appreciated in my career is how people allowed me to fail safely so that I can learn for myself the mistakes that I made. And we've had a lot of newer paramedics join the team recently, and there's a lot of like, I don't know what the right word is to use here, but the seniors feel like the juniors don't know enough, and the juniors feel like the seniors aren't teaching them enough. I said, guys, you know, like even for a doctor working pre-hospitally, there's a learning curve. And if the team can complement each other, that's like eventually where we want to be. And I think that's where London HEMS is at the moment. And I think it's so amazing that you guys have that system in place, you know, that you all like you are in the same place and that this hierarchy is pretty much flat.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we should strive to go. The second thing is like on feedback. There's I'll try and find it and just post it on the group. But when things go wrong, I was in a very interesting situation a few months ago where we had a cardiac arrest in flight, and it was hypoxic arrest, but the tube was blocked. It had the patient had a bronchial plug. But just going through that, so the paramedic that I was with on the day, you know, I realized he's stuck on the idea that, you know, the problem is just a circuit. And, you know, this is a question that I get a lot, is how do you communicate with your crew? How do you give them feedback in the moment when things go wrong? To say that maybe we need to shift our mind like to a different thing or follow a checklist now. And that was quite interesting to me. So I found this tool online. For the life of me, I can't remember what they call it now, but basically it's a like escalated way to give feedback. I noticed, or have you noticed? I'm concerned. And then
So
like you escalate it.
there's a few different ones.
I know PACE.
I know PACE as well, but I know.
Oh yeah, I think it's the PACE one. I think it's
Yeah.
PACE.
PACE works
But
really
I mean,
well.
that's such a good tool to use, like within teams, because it makes, and I think in a high performing team, you will never get to the fifth one. You'll never say, step aside, I'm doing this now.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because if everyone is sharing the same model, but for, I think for a system like ours, where we're not fully integrated and people don't always know each other, like the people that they work for, like especially in EMS, that's a very useful tool to have to communicate with other service providers or other healthcare professionals.
And I think that's probably
So
more
I just wanted to
important
share that.
is to realize when you're being managed by somebody else using that tool so that you can really wake up and pay attention. It's like I'll find myself hearing, acknowledging, and then not necessarily making it important to me, what's important to the other person. So hearing that I notice or I'm worried about as someone who's trying to escalate through the steps is really important. We had a message, just from Kate, who says it's really important to debrief or discuss almost every case. Obviously, the more we practice, the better we get. And then when things don't go well, and we've had really good conversations about things that have gone well, it's a little bit easier to jump in. And then Danielle is just saying positive constructive feedback is important. The balance is important. I think this is a really cool quote. Speak truth with grace. So we can't lie to each other, but we do need to speak to each other nicely in a way that
Yeah, we
gets the
do.
truth
But
across.
I think something which we shouldn't teeter around when it comes to feedback, which I think we do a lot of in England, which I don't think we do a lot of in South Africa, is we need to, if things are wrong, we need to provide ways to improve that. We skirt the edges in England a lot about, like, it's not very direct. They're not at the most direct grouping of people. They're not like us. So I think we need to make sure when we're giving feedback and there is something that needs to be changed, it needs to be brought up in the right way. So we shouldn't do the blunt South African way of doing things, but we also shouldn't do the skirting around, sugarcoating the topic way of doing things. There needs to be a good balance in the middle to give both the positive and the negative feedback.
There is actually, thank you so much for sharing, Shahid. There is a human factors course that John Lewis is presenting, I think in November, coming up in the next few weeks. The link has been shared there. It looks absolutely amazing. I'm super sad I can't go, but it looks absolutely amazing. The tool that Mali was talking about is called the PACE mnemonic. So you can just look up PACE human factors or PACE. It's graded assertiveness.
Graded assertiveness.
That's what it's called. Graded assertiveness. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? The word of the day for today is going to be feedback. Shahid?
Hi, thanks, Caleb. Yeah, that course for anybody who's in Cape Town will be in November. It's really one that was employed by Air Mercy Service on a smaller scale, just doing CRM within the high acuity teams, but definitely something for somebody to actually have a look at. And then a question for your speaker, do they still use the SCRAM system within the HEMS thank you.
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think you guys, I think London HEMS used it for a little while. It's that Scram airway bag that was developed by South African. I think the Scottish teams use it as well.
Oh yeah, we don't.
You guys haven't used it.
But one of the medical directors at London is South African. I can't think of his name.
I think he developed it with a dude from Scotland or something. There was a link.
I can't remember his name now. But
they are very nice though.
We don't. We've got purpose-built PAX bags that are for the way this system works for us.